Yeah, there he is. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to GoDaddy Pro Meetup. My name is Marcus Burnette, and today I'm a marketing specialist for GoDaddy Pro, and today I'm joined by three smart people to offset myself and answer some questions about starting the new year off on the right foot here in 2022. Before I introduce them, I just want to let you know that we'll be monitoring the chat if you're joining us here live, and we'll answer questions that you may have as we go along. And also, we'll send out a replay to this. This is being recorded, and we'll send out the replay as soon as it's available on our GoDaddy Pro YouTube channel. First up, we have Sandy Edwards, who is the U.S. Field Marketing Manager for GoDaddy Pro. How are you today, Sandy?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome. And then next up, we have one of our senior product managers here at GoDaddy, Justin Nealey. How are you doing today, Justin?
Phenomenal and about to be caffeinated. I've drank way too much water today, like you, so I need to offset that.
Offset that with some caffeine. Nice. Yeah, I am missing the caffeine a little bit, being on an all water diet at the moment, but I'm going to try and power through it. And then joining us, hopefully shortly in just a little bit, will be Director of Marketing for Hosting, Chris Edwards. And he'll join us shortly. I know he's in a meeting, and we'll hop over as soon as he can. Today, we're going to talk about some fresh ideas heading into a new year of business, and some tips and tricks and what our panelists have learned through the years of doing business. I believe that all of you have either owned or been part of running a web business, and so we'll look to pull some ideas out of your brains for this coffee talk. To get started, I have a question. So with the year just getting started, what's something that you would say is most important to tackle before we get too far into the year? Either one of you.
I'll jump right in. So one of the things that I do, I still run an agency as well as what I do for GoDaddy, and we have made it so that our agency, we spend probably 3 hours or so a month on it, which is not too bad. But the biggest thing is making sure that we audit everything, audit clients, audit expenditures, audit the invoices actually went out and got paid. And so between December and January, the bulk of the time that I spend on the agency is literally auditing everything. So, Justin, you look like you've done this many a time before.
Oh yeah. So outside of GoDaddy, I freelance, but I mostly freelance with a couple of agencies. And now I contract out, just way less time than working with a client, do the full end to end. So me and one of the agencies I primarily work with, definitely auditing. We'll end up finding some random clients that are still on your hosting and never got transferred away or stopped paying, or just the little things that kind of fall into the cracks. And then the thing right now is just documenting all of our processes and seeing what can kind of be improved with what we've been doing, whether that's from the client intake to the actual handoff to the documentation and training to basically everything, and just make sure you have everything documented and see how you can improve it or automate some stuff to hopefully save you some more time in the next year, and really just taking whatever you've learned over the past year and actually using it this year to be better and not do the dumb mistakes or time wasters at the end of the day.
Nice. Welcome, Chris. We're sort of just getting started. I introduced you briefly, but you are the Director of Marketing for Hosting here at GoDaddy, but I know that you also have plenty of experience running a web services business. So the first question that I had asked that Sandy and Justin were just talking about was just sort of with the year getting started, what's sort of the first thing that you want to get into before the year gets too far along? Things that you want to make sure that you're doing right as the year starts.
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yep. Sounds good.
Perfect. Yeah. So the biggest thing I like to jump into is the first thing we do is we go through and we take a look at all the different services that we pay for, that are monthly recurring services, and then we audit those different services and those different products to see which ones we're using and which ones we're not. This is a practice started doing when we weren't doing it for a while. We came in and we realized that there's a huge savings that we had of products that we just were paying for that we maybe used for one client that we could have rolled them over to a different product. So that's kind of our first thing, is just to really go through all of our different offerings and products that we have and see what are we using and what are we not using, or what have we shifted focus. For example, if we are running SEO plans, we hit a point where we only had one SEO client left, and we were paying for a package for all the tools in order to continue running our SEO services. We were paying more money than we were earning from that client. And so instead, we found it better to hand that client off to a partner agency and cancel all of our SEO tools that we were doing with that, because we were actually losing money by holding on to that client with those services.
Nice. Yeah. A follow up I had, and you've sort of touched on it a little bit. When you start the new year, do you tend to start with, sales? Like, what are we gonna do to get new clients this year? Do you work on nurturing existing clients first, or just really focus in on your internal processes to begin with?
Depends on the year, but over the years, it comes down to need. Do I need to increase my recurring revenue this year? Do I need to get new projects in this year? It's goal setting, sitting down at the beginning of the year and saying, okay, what do I need to be considered successful this year? Because what my business may need to be successful this year may not be what your business needs to be successful this year. But set goals, set smart goals. Make sure that they're able to succeed and that they're measurable. All of those things to make sure that what your end goal for the year, if your end goal is to make $100,000 in profit, break that down into how many projects at $20,000 do you need to hit that goal, or whatever your price point is, because that's going to allow you to actually make actionable tasks to be able to move towards those goals. Because without it, you're just shooting an arrow, hoping you hit a target that you don't even see a target to hit.
Right. What about you, Justin?
I think it's going to kind of depend on what the previous year kind of store. I know we're kind of readjusting to what the new normal is, so things are, for me at least, starting to calm down. I know for the longest time it was a frenzy of, oh, we got to get e-commerce, we got to do this, we got to do that to try to generate revenue, and now it's calming down. It's getting more consistent versus just the random one-off requests. So just making sure I pace myself to understand what that new normal flow is for me. And then to piggyback on Sandy, those goals are so important, especially be super specific with those goals and not just say, yeah, I'm going to do, and we're going to get lots more clients this year. We're going to kick butt and do all the good things. But like, cool, I want to achieve 10 extra clients. And then, like Sandy said, break it down. Like, what does that mean? Because you want it to be November, like, oh, I only got one new client. Now I have to like rush to get 9, and not really tracking anything else. So yeah, it really just depends, and just having that bigger picture of what you really want to accomplish based off where you are in your day to day.
Cool. I know I guess as a society, draw this line between December 31st and January 1st, like there's a real difference like the last year is gone and this year is a reset. When you're determining your goals for the year, do you kind of start with what you had last year and that kind of flows into this year, or do you start fresh on January 1st and are like, well, we've tossed that aside, we're going to look at where we are now and move forward with just a different set of goals entirely?
I think that you want to look at what you've done in the past, because with goals, you can really only take a look at you only can achieve those goals if you have a baseline for those. So this is something we do in marketing all the time. Is before we start running any kind of experimentation or doing anything, along those lines, we create a baseline so that we understand what are we currently at, and that gives us an idea of what we can achieve. So when you're starting to go backwards and you're starting to looking at the previous year and seeing, if I come in and say I want to sell 30 new SEO clients, or I want to sell 30 new of this types of package, and you didn't offer that last year at all, you need to have a baseline of why you're trying to, if you're going to be able to create that. And so knowing that knowledge off, and just instead of just creating a new goal out of nowhere, you need to have something that can help you understand if you're going to be able to reach and achieve that goal. Because nothing's more deflating than getting to the end of the year and setting a goal of 30 and realizing you sold 3. It makes you really question a whole lot. So you want to make sure that the goals that you're setting are not too aggressive, and they're attainable. Going back to what Sandy was saying, setting SMART goals. Something that's measurable, something that's attainable. Those types of goals are what you really want to be setting. So you have to have something to look back on. There's nothing wrong with setting new goals. Just make sure with those new goals that you have something to back that, by looking towards your past business.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with setting like over the top goals. We call those stretch goals. So we have our normal goals that like we kind of expect to hit if we hustle and do what we need to do. Then there's those goals that are like, man, if I really hit this, like I'm killing it. And you can always have that little bit of extra to kind of push yourself, but make it to where you're not deflating yourself at the end of the year, questioning, should I actually be still running my agency or not?
Yeah, Sandy, it looks like you tossed in the chat there. We keep talking about SMART goals. SMART's actually an acronym, right? What are the 5 for SMART?
It needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So when you're setting your business goal, you want to say that I want to get 6 new SEO clients by June, provided you feel that's achievable and relevant and realistic to what you have going on. If you're not an SEO specialist, that would not be your goal. But though that is the rule of thumb that most business coaches will give you is to use the SMART. And if you Google SMART goals, there are tools and blog posts and resources to help walk you through the writing process for those.
Yeah, that's cool. We have a question in the chat about using pricing or adjusting pricing and stuff, which kind of maybe filters in a little bit to one of my other questions. So let's say you're setting a goal for the year, you want to make more money, right? That's most businesses. But let's say you've set a SMART goal, you know how much to get there. What do you look at first? Do you look at we need more clients, or we need to change our pricing, or we need to offer a new service? How do you sort of go about thinking through what the achievable part of that is? What are your thoughts on how you decide which one of those things? Those are probably like the 3 avenues to go. How do you decide which direction to go, whether you need more clients or change up your pricing or anything like that?
So the answer of yes work.
all
No,
3, more of everything.
so you probably want to start with what's easiest, and kind of your clients can be a little bit more difficult. You got to go out and kind of hustle. Um, if you want more than what you're currently getting. What I really like to do though is take a look at how I'm positioning the value that I'm providing by building a website or helping with someone's landing pages or making sure their site's converting, and seeing if I'm undervaluing or underselling the services I provide. Because a website designer can go out and say, yeah, I can build you a website, and you'll get a cap of however much someone will spend to build a website. You start to reposition of cool, so we're going to help you achieve your goals and make you sure you hit this number of sales this year and this many leads. And that's the experience I'm building, the value I'm building towards that. Because I position it that way and that's my focus, I can charge a hell of a lot more than if I just said I build websites. So really taking a look at the messaging that you're using, and even talking to people and seeing like what they would price that at it. Like even if you're just trying to mess with messaging of like, hey, if someone did this for your business and they offer these services instead of this way. Like, what would you pay for that? Like, what is that worth to you? And start to get kind of a benchmark, and see and test it against what you're currently offering to see if you're on par, you're under, you're way overselling, whatever that looks like. But a lot of it comes down to just messaging the value that you actually do, because more than likely you do a hell of a lot more than you say you do. I know most of us here do.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of build off of that. One of the exercises we always do every year is we do look at our pricing. Because if you don't, with inflation, with everything else going on, you may end up 10 years down the road being the cheapest option and having a hard time, bringing in. Now, with most of our clients, we do keep them at the price they came in on. Um, uh, Typically we do have a clause in our contract that says we can come back and look at pricing at any point in time. However, most of the time we just keep their pricing at what they came on with the exception of, we have some clients that we've had for 10 years, and what we were charging 10 years ago is not what we're charging today, and we've had to rebuild them into new plans. But one of the things that we do is we go and we actually strip the pricing, any pricing we have, off of our website. And so what we do is we pull that off, and then as we work with some new clients as they're coming on board, we go ahead and we kind of do a little bit of experimentation. We present different price points for different items, and we come in a little bit higher. And typically, we don't go way too high. We do come in a little bit higher, and then we see what they want us, what we have to work it down to figure out what our pricing should be. So if we're making the change that we want to go from $100 an hour to $150 an hour for development services, we'll start at that $150 an hour, and then we'll work with a couple of these clients, and we'll see where we end up between that range. And then from there, that's where we'll then set our pricing of going forward. Of this is what our pricing. Even on our maintenance plans, we clear out the price every, and you'll see for the first 2 or 3 months we won't even put the price on there. And we actually made the decision to just not have the price on the front of our on front of site anymore. But we pulled that off so that we can then try to experiment a little bit and see what the clients are willing to pay for that service, in today's, and also audit all of your competitors. Go pull their pricing down, see what their pricing is at, so that you have that idea as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Taking a step back, I guess, a little bit from what it is that you're doing at the beginning of the year, do any of you have any mental tricks or anything to kind of get started? Do you start with sort of smaller tasks and work your way up to bigger things? Do you try and knock out the biggest thing first and then kind of work your way down to some of the details and stuff? Any mental tips or tricks for people that just don't know where to start?
So the first part, we typically, and we've already kind of passed this part, but it would be something to look at as you build out your year this year, is we typically do December planning. And what that is we actually try to, and typically from Thanksgiving on, we don't have a lot of clients coming in. That's typically our slow season. And so we take advantage of that to not bring on too many large projects so that we can focus internally on what we're doing. And then I guess it really is sit down with your team, book a whole entire time, and get away from all the distractions. No checking emails, no checking tickets, no going through, put an agenda out there, and it should not be talking about any individual client. The only client you're talking about is your business. And I think sitting down and having that, and if you're a smaller shop, maybe it's going to taking the team out and going and sitting somewhere that renting out a room at the back room of a restaurant, and just having where everyone sits down and just has that conversation. Keep it open, keep it fun. Come in with no idea is too far fetched, and just have everyone make everyone feel safe, just coming up with whatever ideas, and leverage your entire team. Every single person that works for the company is gonna have ideas, and hear all the ideas out, put them all down onto a whiteboard, or onto a presentation file, have it all listed out, and then go through the process of kind of voting them down. Everyone here is familiar internally doing the inception process is what it is, where we bring all these teams together and everyone throws ideas in, and then everyone starts kind of voting and talking about those ideas and figuring out which ones are in scope and out of scope.
Yeah, it's so hard to give yourself permission to ignore your clients temporarily and spend the time to focus on your business and what you're offering and that kind of thing. Sandy, Justin, you have anything to add to that as well?
I think one of the biggest things that getting over like that mental anguish of staring down goal setting and auditing and all of these things that we've been discussing is to break it into smaller chunks. So you're going to audit expenses and you're going to set that as a December goal. And then at the end of December, in between Christmas and New Year's, or maybe you do it before Christmas, you're going to sit down and you're going to start auditing all of those clients that you're hosting. Are they paying? Like Justin mentioned earlier, because the last thing you want is to be hosting someone that's no longer paying their bill. Or as I've discovered every now and again, I forgot to set them up on the recurring payments to begin with. They had every intention of paying, totally forgot to set them up. My fault. It happens. We're all human. But making sure that those audits are completed, and then going into January, set time aside. But if you break it down into single tasks, you can get over that mental anguish of like, oh, I have to do year end and new year planning and I'm gonna die. Because it is overwhelming. It looks overwhelming, but breaking that into smaller tasks is always gonna kind of get over that initial like brick wall syndrome.
Yeah, and it kind of starts to snowball. You start to get those wins, and you just keep going. Like, oh, I got it done. And you look back, you're like, oh, I got a lot done. I'll do a little bit of a flip side though. For me, it's just setting dedicated time aside to do stuff that isn't related to work at all. 'Cause a lot of the December and even now is just planning and figuring everything out for the rest of the year. And you can get burnt out pretty quick because there's never enough time in the day to do all the work that you need to do. But just taking those either little breaks, for me, I'll just play Xbox for like 10, 15 minutes and just kind of reset, or go for a walk, or schedule a trip to go up and play in the snow, or whatever that might be, and just get out of work. So that way, when you do come back to work, you're refreshed and energized and kind of just ready to go tackle all the little tasks that you set aside for yourself.
Yeah, Beth in the chat is saying capturing lessons learned and ideas from the team should be an ongoing thing. Once per year is not enough. Obviously, that's definitely true. Is that something that you guys do after each project too? Sort of recap to see how the projects went and all of that throughout the year?
Not just recapping the project, but recapping the profitability of the project, tracking your time that you're working on that project. And also, and don't take this the wrong way, but kind of sort of grading and analyzing the client. Is this a client that if they reached back out again, would I want to do this again? Was it worth the 6 40-hour work weeks that they made me do because they weren't reasonable? Or was it, were they super nice and super sweet, but had zero idea what they wanted? And I had to like flounder to get any information out of them. Both of those are problem clients, and the super nice person may not feel like one, but you spent a lot more time than you anticipated trying to like figure out what they wanted because they weren't sure. So different types of problem clients, but still like figuring out, maybe you're really good at that. Like your skill set is being able to figure out what someone who doesn't know what they want is. That's great. That's not your problem client, but the other guy is. So, being able to sit down and kind of, in the events world, we call it a post-con, like a post-conference wrap-up. Sitting down and doing that at the end of a major project is always a solid idea.
That's a great point. We actually just had a client last year. It was a $60,000 project. It was actually a very simple build, but it was a rush job. They wanted it. It was for a publicly traded corporate company who had a lot of stakeholders, and we decided to go ahead and take the project on. We knew that we would be doing 60-hour weeks for about 6 weeks. But for the payday of $60,000 for 6 weeks worth of work, we decided it was something worth taking on, and that we could handle all the stakeholders. After we were done, they asked us if we wanted to do another project, and we made a new rule that we would not take those types of projects on again, regardless of how much money. Because while the money was nice, the stress and what it turned into was just not worth worth that. And I see Lawrence asked a question in there about the threshold in billing revenue for a client to be worth your while, and I think that kind of goes along that as well. Is it's not always just about what the cost is, but also what is that mental cost of that client.
Mhm.
And I think that's a number you have to figure out yourself for yours. Now, I do know on a dollar figure with us, it changed over time. We went up to where we weren't interested in a project if it had no recurring side to it. That our minimum was $5,000 for a project for us to even be willing to take the time to look at it, just because of the amount of sales and work that goes into a project. Versus recurring clients, we were willing to go down a little less, on down to maybe about 3,000, because we knew that we would have the recurring side of that revenue to create that recurring revenue stream. So I think it's one of those that you have to really look at and this is going back to what Beth was saying, capturing your lessons learned from previous clients, and seeing what number makes up for all of that, and to make sure that you also take into um, take into account your mental side as well. Your mental health is important, to make sure that you're not overstressing yourself and not enjoying what you do to take on clients. So make sure that dollar figure and the mental anguish match.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's
really
all
don't
gonna.
have anything to add on top of those two. Just that money isn't worth everything. I've had many clients. I'm like, oof, I wish I would have referred you to someone I hated. Um, but yeah, you'll kind of start to understand what that looks like, and um, at the end of the day, like, your mental sanity is worth everything.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like Chris was saying, a lot of that's just going to depend on your business and the capacity that you have based on the team that you have and how much they can do and how much they need to be paid for what they do. And then again, just the mental stresses, not just on yourself but your whole team, because your team is so valuable, and making sure that they're taken care of is also incredibly important. You can't pass off that mental stress to your team and expect everything to go well. So that's super important. Speaking of which, one of the questions that I have also is for any of you that have or have had employees working for you. Is the beginning of the year a time where you kind of assess um, like your team, how they're doing, ways that you can improve if you need to hire, all of those kind of things? Is the beginning of the year a good time for that?
Any time of the year is good for that. Kind of going back to what Beth. I think you should always, definitely with your year and or beginning of the year planning, you should be looking at that. But I think that you should always be assessing, you know, is my team overworked? Is there not enough? Is there too much coming in? And making that decision, because the decision to bring someone on, um, once you make that decision, from time of making that decision to putting together the budget, putting together everything else you need to, interviews and hiring process and getting them onboarded, you're looking at, it's going to take 4 or 5 months potentially to bring in that right person to help with your team. And so you should be assessing it at all times. You don't want to be in July stretched thin and go, well, we'll look at this next year, and then you're not really bringing somebody in until March or April of the next year, and your team is overworked, overstressed, going, stretching that long, waiting for you to bring in that extra person.
Yeah, when I worked at an agency, our general formula was if our team is working more than 40 hours a week for more than 6 weeks, it's time to bring someone else on. Do you guys have any advice or tips or any kind of formula that you play by, or is it just sort of a gut feeling?
Um, in the past, it's been a lot of needs-based things. So looking at, okay, we know that we're going to be up against these, we've got these 8 huge, massive projects coming on. Does it make sense to hire someone full time that I then need to make sure I keep those projects coming in to fulfill their time? Or does it make sense for me to get a freelancer in to help fill the need right now with the understanding that they're filling a need right now? Because there is an amazing freelance market that allows you to bring in contractors with very specific niches for very specific projects, and keeping a Rolodex of those. That is a really old term, but keeping a Rolodex of
What is
those
that?
names. So there was this thing that would sit on your desk and you'd roll it and it had paper cards with numbers on it.
That seems
Um,
horribly inefficient.
it is. Welcome to the 1950s. They called and they want their Rolodex back. But keeping all of those names and numbers handy to be able to reach out to someone and say, hey, do you have time for this, WooCommerce project? Because you don't specialize with WooCommerce and they do, has been way easier than trying to build up a staff, like a 20-person staff agency. Um, but then again, everything that I've done so far, of what I've owned, has been very um, one-off project type things that aren't all in the same niche or bubble. So I've needed to lean more on contractors than employees, whereas I have a full-time project manager that manages all of those things.
How about you, Justin? Have you had any experience with hiring employees and figuring out when the right time is?
So not in this aspect. Yes, for GoDaddy itself. For me, it's been primarily just hiring contractors out to kind of fill those specific needs that goes beyond my technical wheelhouse, or if I just don't have the time to kind of accomplish it. Um, so yeah, I'll just kind of defer to Sandy and Chris there.
Fair enough. Do you all recommend sort of contracting out first and seeing if that's something that you need long term? And then is there some sort of timeline? Say, oh, I've needed the contractor to do this for 6 months now. Maybe we should consider bringing someone that does that on board.
Yeah, I think bringing a contractor in and seeing how much time and effort they're putting in. Once you hit it, you'll hit a certain point, and you'll hit a certain point where, depending who you're contracting through, you may be paying an extra. If you're working through another agency, there's overhead that you're paying for that agency to do, basically the white label contracting, and so you'll hit a point where you're going to say, well, I can bring someone on for X amount of dollars, and I'm spending more than that right now for this contractor to do less work. That's when it can then make sense to go ahead and bring them in. And also, I would, sometimes talk with your contractor. Sometimes there's a way to bring that contractor on board full time. We've had that happen. We actually did that last year with one of our contractors. Brought them in. We told them that we don't have enough work at this time to fill their plate, but we actually told them that if they could help us generate some more work for them and justify us turning it into a full-time position, we'd be able to. And they were able to generate enough work and enough hours for us to then make it made more sense to go ahead and pull them in as a full-time employee.
Yeah, nice. All right. I'm gonna see if I can get you all to out yourselves on a previous mistake. So, let's say, what is something that you wish you had done early in a previous year and didn't do it, and what did you learn from that? if you can think of any.
I'll start while Sandy and Justin think here a little bit. I think it was really going back on coming up with. I, I think the biggest mistake I made one time was just jumping straight into business. Didn't take time to really build out my plan. I didn't take the time that I didn't take the time to come up with a true marketing plan. And so business plans, when you go in business school, they tell you before you start a business, you always got to create a business plan for 5 years out and all this other. In this world, is very difficult to create that because things change so quickly. But by creating just a business plan to focus on, your year, I think is the biggest thing. And I know this is what this whole conversation's about, but I think we 1 year just jumped right in. We had new projects coming on. We didn't push those projects back. We just jumped right in, started doing those projects, and then it was project after project and these things coming in. Our site was a mess. We didn't really know which direction we wanted to go. We had all these ideas and we were running, wearing all these different hats, trying to run after all these different ideas. And we did not take the time to just sit down and say, what do we want to do? What's our marketing plan? What's our, business plan? Where are we going to get our leads from? And just really understanding all the different pieces we were going to do. So I think that was one of our biggest mistakes going into a year, was just diving in before taking the time to really analyze what we were doing. And then we actually, I think, lost a little bit of money or a little bit of potential revenue that we could have generated because we didn't put those plans in place. We finally found time. It was almost May. We finally found some time to sit down, kind of analyze it, look at what we were doing. And we realized there was a lot of lost opportunities that had we done that in the beginning, we wouldn't have had that.
Nice. That's hopefully something that no one hanging out with us here is going to have happen to them, since that's what we're all here for. Sandy or Justin, either of you have any stories or anything you'd like to share as well?
Yeah. For me, it is providing a quote for work that I haven't necessarily defined that I can do. I really like to learn new challenges and like figure stuff out. So like when something gets presented to me, like I've never done that before, but I probably could, and giving a rough quote to what I think that might end up becoming, and then it becoming just a giant rabbit hole and wasted way more time. I should have just hired someone to end up doing it for me. Would have saved time and money there. So now when I get presented something that is super exciting to me and I definitely want to kind of figure it out, I'll take a little bit to kind of research to see if it's something that is worth the time investing to actually learn it, or if I'm going to contract out and have someone help me with the project, or if I'm just going to say, no, I don't want to do this at all. So I don't get stuck in that rabbit hole where I end up losing money on the job for how much time it took away to work on my other projects, or just end up hiring a contractor at the end of the day to do it for me.
Yeah, I've definitely made that same mistake. Just the challenge looked exciting, and then it
Exactly.
ended up being just way more than it should have been.
The challenge beat me.
Yeah, Beth shared in the chat as well. She says one of her biggest mistakes is not being willing to pay for services, courses, or plugins, or the tools that are really needed, trying to do it on less than a shoestring budget. So her advice is to pay for the best of what you really need, making sure that you have all the tools that you need, because that's gonna, again, save you the time, or in cases of some of those challenges, make sure that you're paying, for contractors to handle some of that, because again, time is the most valuable thing that any of us have. And if you can pay to get some of that back, it's generally worth it. Suzanne asked in the chat, she says, I'm a sole proprietor with a new website, no employees, no products. I'm service oriented as a consultant, but would like to have new clients. Most of her clients come from word of mouth. How can I generate more through the web? Are there some things that Suzanne can start with to start the year off here to generate more through the web, through her website or social platforms or anything web related, I guess.
So I'll jump in a little bit on this one. This is what I do all day, is marketing. So kind of diving into look at your different channels that you have available to you. So you got a lot of different marketing channels digitally that you can kind of take a look at. And one of the big things that I have found, especially for small businesses and agencies, is using social media groups. And so what I mean by that is take a look at, like, depending on what your niche is, what you're working in, what type of business you have. Find Facebook groups that support that. There are, for example, if you're in the website designer developer community, there's things like the admin zone, where you have a whole bunch of um, other agency owners. And what you'll find is when you join those groups, A, you'll get a ton of great ideas, but B, you'll actually find other companies or other agencies that are willing to hand off their clients. And this is not just in that side. Most niches have these types of groups, the business groups that you can join in, and you'll be able to find a lot of different channels from that, or potential clients. A lot of times referrals, things along those lines that can come in from that side. On top of that, you can then also look at doing some test spins with maybe some social media ads, or some paid search campaigns. I would recommend, if that's not your area of expertise, team up with somebody who is really good with that and have them help you run those, so you can optimize that budget or campaign, so you're not just spending money. Facebook and Google and Twitter, all of them will make it very easy for you to spend money with them to advertise, but they will not. If you don't set up your campaign correctly, you may not be as successful with that campaign. So I would find somebody you can work with to help you set up some marketing campaigns on that side. I'd also look at industry events and meetups around your area that you can join in on as well.
Yeah,
And
those are all good.
depending on
Yeah.
what you do, there may be local business groups and things like that to get involved with. Most of the time, those business groups will only allow one of each type of thing in the group. So there'll only be one website developer in the group, and there'll only be, one person who paints fences or does painting or whatever. And so it becomes a lead trades group. So when someone comes in, knows that someone needs their fence painted, they're going to bring that lead into the group and hand it off to John, and John's going to go paint their fence. So um, BNI stuff like that is always good, especially if your business is more service or consultancy based.
And Beth put a great idea in the chat, and I've done it myself. Basically, speaking at those local events, educating people that would inevitably hire you, teaching your best practices of what works, and sharing your experiences with them. Because after the session, if you gave any piece of value, you'll get a couple people that'll come up to you and like, "Hey, I need help with so and so. Are you available, or can we get time to kind of speak?" I've go to WordPress meetups, and I'll all the time get some person like, "Hey, can you help me with this random thing that I couldn't figure out?" And it's just a good idea to just be a part of the community just to begin with, and help out other people, because you might get some help on the flip side. I also love to, it may not help right away, but start to foster those leads and relationships by creating some type of either an ebook or a checklist or something that gets someone into your funnel. Because while they may not need to hire you right now, they might need you later. And when they start to look, who's been that person helping them out, giving them content, giving them advice, sending out newsletters and updates and things like that, it's going to be you. Or if they have a friend that says, "I need someone to build a website. Do you know anyone?" And like, "Well, this person's been sending me awesome content. Why don't you check them out?" And that can be a great lead. While it won't happen immediately, it's all about building that relationship, so you're top of mind when that instance does happen.
Yeah, I like what Beth mentioned also in creating some strategic partnerships, right? There are probably lots of local companies that do something that complements what you do as a website designer, developer, builder. Creating those partnerships so that when people come to you for a website and need XYZ other marketing thing that you don't do, you have that partnership to reach out to and lean on, and vice versa for them. If they have someone that comes to them for other marketing pieces and they need a website, and that partner doesn't do websites, then you have that back and forth between each other. It's a truly a win-win for both partners in those situations. Let's see if we have any other questions in the chat. Some other chatter there, but no questions. So I actually only have one left before we kind of wrap it up here, and sort of just what's one kind of final takeaway from each of you for people that are just wanting to start 2022 off on a high note? What is kind of just the one place that they should focus down on first to make sure that 2022 is going to be great?
For me, it's always process. Understanding your processes and how to optimize them to just be more efficient or automate it to where you don't have to do those anymore, because that time saved now gives you more something new, or find new clients, or mess with your marketing and website, or even update your website, because most of us haven't done that in a while. So anything I can do to give myself a little bit more time back the day by optimizing those processes is definitely the focus for me.
And to build off that, I would also say, as you optimize those processes, optimize your offerings. So go back, take a look at what are you offering, and what are the price, what's the pricing on that, and see what you can do to optimize those. That could be changing what looking at the merchandising, and what do you offer in, if you have packages, what do you offer in those packages, or what do you offer as services. And I challenge you, look at seeing if you can create a new product or service to add to your lineup this year. I think that's always something big to at least just test it out. If it doesn't work, you can walk away from it, but try and challenge yourself to come up with that new product or new service and update what you currently offer as well.
And I'm going to say set your goals. So optimize your processes, optimize your offerings, set your goals, and you will be off to an amazing 2022.
Step 4, profit.
Step 4, profit. Let's do it.
Step 4, profit. Love it.
You get some profit and you get some profit.
A lot of internal reflection there on all of those answers. I love it. I love that the best thing that you can do at the beginning of this year is to sort of look inward at your own business, at your own processes and what you're doing, and streamline those before worrying about everything that's going on with your clients or getting new clients or all of that, and making sure that your own things are in order first. So I love that there's definitely that theme through all of the things that you all said. So with that, I'll wrap us up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks for everyone that hung out in the chat and asked questions. Next week, the same time, same place, we have 2 web developers from Sam Munoz Consulting that's going to be talking to us about streamlining your pre-client journey to book more clients. For this one and any other past and future events, head to events.godaddy.com or catch any past event replays on our GoDaddy Pro YouTube channel. And that's it for us. Thank you, Sandy, Justin, and Chris, for hanging out and bringing all the wisdom.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. This was fun.
Awesome. See everyone next time.
Bye, y'all.